Hello and welcome back to another World of Warcraft lore video. This time we're going to be talking about Ragefire Chasm. Now this is one of the smaller instances, but actually it does have a lot of lore and it has many different iterations. There's Vanilla, Cataclysm, the Siege of Orgrimmar, lots of different things like that. Now it is a small instance and it's actually the first one that the Horde players encounter, so a lot of people are probably going to be familiar with it, but perhaps not the lore behind it. So originally these caverns were founded by a goblin called Gazlo, and this was way back during the original formation of Orgrimmar and when the Horde was all being tied together by Thrall. Now originally they just didn't really know what to do with the place, bar observed that a group of trogs, called the Ragefire Trogs, had somehow managed to sneak their way into the tunnels far, far below the chasm. Magatha Grim Totem, or Magatha the Seer, as she was called back then, did try to communicate with them. However, all attempts were met with hostility. Really, that's to be expected because Trogs, they don't really seem to be the most friendly kind of group. Now later on, a sect of the Shadow Council called the Searing Blade moved in. Now the Searing Blade were a sister organisation to the larger Burning Blade, and they were formed shortly after the founding of Orgrimmar. They were led by a Felguard called Targram the Hungerer, an Orc Warlock called Jarosh, and a Satyr called Basilan. And what these guys were doing was just basically plotting lots of moves against Orgrimmar, until, of course, back in Vanilla, they all got killed by players. Targaman, or whoever he was thought to be the leader of the clan, but he was actually a red herring. The actual leaders were Jarosh and Basilan. Jarosh was trying to summon in demons using a blood-filled orb, which is an item that's actually usable in a rather cool Blood Elf Paladin quest that I remember from ages ago. And then as for Basilan, he doesn't have much lore to him, other than the fact that he's an important satyr. Finally then, there was Ogleflint. He was the leader of the Ragefire Trogs, and he was too weak to get rid of the cultists, so him and the other Trogs just kind of scurried off to the upper levels of the chasm, where they just kind of chilled out for a while. Anyway, so this was all done, and the killing of this bunch was really not the end of things. Later on, a new bunch of tenants moved in. These guys were the Dark Shaman. They were basically a mixture of some disgruntled shamans from Orgrimmar, and then the Twilight's Hammer clan. And during the Cataclysm era, Garrosh actually sent players down here with a Horde officer called Zoranth to kill them all off. Now there is a slight continuity error here, because officially the Dark Shaman were kind of founded after the Twilight's Hammer, their defeat, but regardless anyway, players went in and they killed the Dark Shaman. Now for some boss lore. So Adorag is the big flamehound that was summoned in from the Firelands by the Dark Shaman. He was really big, and the reason he got so big is because they fed him trogs. Probably live ones, but well, no one really cares about trogs. The next guy was a Dark Shaman called Kor'kron, who was basically just an ex-Twilight Hammer cultist. And then we have Slagmaw, who is just a giant worm that the Shaman were not able to control. And then finally we have Lava Guard Gordoth. This guy basically got kind of turned into his twisted state by trying to mimic the Twilight's Hammer cult process of elemental ascendancy. He completely pit-failed, basically, and the power drove him completely bonkers, absolutely off his head. Alliance players do actually come here as well via SI7 because they believe that the Horde were massing an army down there. Now you may think that's the end of it. It is not the end of it though. Basically, what happened is this guy, Zoranth, is actually a Dark Shaman. We found this out in Mists of Pandaria, so that seems a bit weird, isn't it? A Dark Shaman leading us down there to kill other Dark Shaman. Well, he basically, at that time, during Cataclysm, ended up manipulating those Horde adventurers into killing unworthy members of his organisation. The big question is, though, did Garrosh know about this during Cataclysm times? He is completely okay with using anything as a weapon, so having these Dark Shaman massing down, even during the Cataclysm days, certainly does fit with his entire motive. Now, you may think that's us done with Ragefire Chasm, but that is not. We actually have one or two more things. So later on during Mists of Pandaria, a group of goblins called the Gob Squad, in this scenario, ended up venturing back down there to subdue the kor'kron. We end up finding a bunch of interesting things. First of all, the kor'kron are massing forces in secret, and second we find out that they're experimenting with proto-drake eggs that were obtained from the Dragonmaw clan. Once we went in there, well, we were technically victorious, but a lot of people were nearly killed, and we didn't really deal with the problem, we just kind of got some intelligence. But anyway, we ended up killing Zoranth, and we reported the news to Vol'jin. Vol'jin would later, of course, act on that news, and various things would lead to the rebellion. And then finally, after the rebellion, we have the Siege of Orgrimmar, and this is where we get to see the full extent of this area. The caverns themselves have been extended, and they lead way on down to the headquarters of Garrosh and the kor'kron. General Nazgrim is located here, and he is, of course, killed there by players. Nazgrim wasn't really an evil orc, but he valued honour, and his oath to his war chief was worth far more than his life, and he just would not defect to Vol'jin's rebellion. But anyway, ultimately, we do clear our way through there, we make our way to the Underhold, and we defeat Garrosh. And really, that's essentially as far as Ragefire Chasm is going to go, in my opinion. I don't think they'll get much more use out of the place, but still, it's interesting. I never really knew that that whole story with Zoranth actually manipulating all the Horde players. I thought that was really interesting. But anyway, let me know what you think. Did you learn things that you didn't about Ragefire? I certainly did. Anyway, thank you very much for watching. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. And I will see you next time.